Hello, everyone. Welcome back to my channel. It is the day after Christmas. I hope you had a wonderful Christmas holiday if you celebrate, and we're looking forward to 2023. So today we're going to talk about a few different things. Of course, what's going on in the real estate market, but specifically what's going on with new listings here in Phoenix and a little bit of speculation of 2023, because what's year end without a little bit of prediction speculation, right? So let's jump right in. Let's start talking about the Cromford Report. If you're new here, the Cromford Report is a publication that I follow that is provided to realtors, and they analyze a ton of data in the MLS to give us all of this information. And one of the things they have is the Cromford Market Index. And the way to look at this is any number between 90 to 110 is considered a balanced market. And you can see that we're at 94.6 today. If you've been following week by week, this is higher than it was over the last 2 weeks. We were hanging out on the cusp of a buyer's market for quite a while, around 89, 88 maybe, but now we are at 94.6, clearly in a balanced market. And why is this happening? Well, our demand is at 71.4 and our supply is at 75.5. So basically, when you have supply and demand that match each other or are very close, that means we're in balance. These two numbers could be at 20, they could be at 120, but either way, if they are matching each other or very close to matching, then we are in a balanced market. So that's essentially how we look at the Cromford Report. So we have our demand. If 100 is balanced, demand is sitting about 29% below normal, and supply is sitting at about 25% below normal. So we have low demand, but we also have low supply. And demand has been ticking up a little bit. We've noticed as interest rates have come down over the last month, we've seen a small uptick in demand. And seasonally, with the holidays right now, we don't typically have a lot of demand anyway. So to see that coming up is encouraging, that there's some demand under the surface there. It's people ready to buy. And so we'll see what the new year brings. That's always the question. Once we all get out of our holiday comas, what is actually going to happen with this market? So last week, I told you would be really surprised to see how many cities on our chart had a green arrow for the CMI. And the way the Cromford Report looks at this is green is good for sellers. So they kind of manage the CMI based on what is good for a seller or bad for a seller. So a green arrow means that the market is improving for a seller. A red arrow means that it's deteriorating for a seller, therefore better for a buyer, right? So this week, you may be shocked because we actually have 15 out of the 17 cities all seeing an improvement for sellers. Last week, I don't remember how many there were, but it wasn't this many. We haven't seen this many green arrows in quite a while. So all of these cities are improving for sellers except for Goodyear and Scottsdale. Those are the only two that over the last month, when you look month over month, did not improve. However, keep in mind, Maricopa, Queen Creek, Buckeye, like all of these are still a buyer's market. Their CMI is well below that 90 range. So anything from Gilbert down is still technically a buyer's market, even though they have green arrows. It just means that over the last month or over the last week, the changes in those cities have become more advantageous for sellers versus less. So take this with a grain of salt, because this does not mean that we are going into a seller's market. It is interesting to see the huge improvement for all of these cities, because over the last month, the monthly change has been an increase of 10.7% on average, which is double. When we looked at last week, it was 5.3% for the average change over the last month. So it has improved, by 10% from last month. When we look at it this week, totally different than where we were before. And probably about a month ago, this number was always negative. We were seeing deterioration for sellers and losing ground on the CMI every single week. Things were trending down. And now not only are we trending up, but it's double where we were at last week. So What does this mean? Are we entering a seller's market again? I think it's too soon to tell. And one of the things we need to look at is the number of new listings, the number of active listings as compared to our demand. And so the Cromford report actually reported that we have seen an increase in coming soon listings by 48%. So a coming soon listing is a listing that is entered into the MLS, but it's not yet active. It is just there as a coming soon. Makes sense. Typically, there aren't showings during this time period. It's just there to get the public interested before the listing actually goes active. So, if you think of it, the holidays are a perfect time for us to have coming soon listings because a lot of people don't want to show their homes if they have family in town and that kind of thing. But we've seen a huge uptick in coming soon listings, which means those listings are going to turn into active listings, right? So, starting the year, we know we're going to have a pretty big increase in listings on the market if our coming soons have jumped 48%. So, does this mean we're going to see a flood of new listings in 2023? My guess is no, probably not a flood, but we're certainly going to see an uptick. Here's what's going on with our numbers right now. This is the number of new listings added each year in December. So you can see this is for 20, my whole screen isn't showing, but this is for 2022, 2258 at this point in time, which was, I think, December 14th, the last time they measured this. But clearly you can just look at this and see that's the lowest bar that we've had going all the way back to 2005. This December has been a very, very low number of new listings coming. In fact, we've only had about 4875 new listings come to the market in the last 4 weeks. And last year at this time, we had about 7,000 hitting the market in that same time period. So we're certainly at a deficit of new listings coming in this December. And that will translate into the beginning of the year. So we may have an uptick in new listings, which makes plenty of sense. But since we're already so low, I don't know how much of a tsunami that's going to be. I don't know how much of a flood that's going to be. But it's very hard to predict for certain. Even though we've seen this uptick of 48% new coming soon listings, it is still less than half of the number of coming soon listings we had in April and May. So that's something to note. And let's just take a look at where we're at with active listings. We're at 17,354. Last week when we looked at this number, it was 18,111. So you can see a trend down here from October. We've only gotten fewer and fewer listings on the market. And over the last month, mortgage interest rates have only started to trend down, which has brought a lot more buyers to the scene. So we'll see when the beginning of the year starts. We may actually have some healthy demand coming to the surface if rates stay where they're at. They're not low by any means, but 6% feels better than 7% for most people. And if we don't get like a shoot off of new listings or a tsunami, we may actually start to see this recovery in our market going towards a seller's market. Being in a seller's market again, we're a strong one. I don't think we're going there, but we may get into a pretty stable area of balance rather than dancing on the cusp of a buyer's market. I don't know. It's hard to know for sure, but I will say that I have started to hear a lot more from buyers ready to start their search as they've seen rates start to go down. So just anecdotally from my business, I've talked to quite a few more buyers lately. Actually have a story to share. Last week, I had a buyer who was interested in a house that was listed, and the house was priced well under the comps. So they certainly wanted to get some attention, and they did. The house ended up getting 20 offers, and it was like going back in time. I was like rushing to get there because they had an offer review deadline, which I couldn't believe we were doing again. So we had to see the house in a certain time period so we could submit the offer by a certain review deadline. And, now I'm asking the questions of how many offers do you have on the table? How high are the offers going? Because, they priced it so low that everyone was like, oh yeah, I'll take a stab at this. So they ended up allegedly with 20 offers. As an exciting part of the story, my client is actually the one that was able to buy the house. And the cool thing about it is, even though we had to overbid, the list price was so low that where we came in at is actually a pretty fair value for what the house should have probably been listed at from the start. So it's kind of an interesting psychology of what happened. But my point is, if even though a house is listed low, if we're getting 20 offers on a property, that means buyers are out there, number one, and two, they're watching, right? Because they all saw that and they were like, oh, I'll take a stab at this. So that's just a little anecdote to share with you guys of what I'm seeing out in the field. So hopefully that helps you to know what's going on. So that's the update. I hope you guys have a wonderful holiday week. Make sure to check the description below. I've got links to check your instant home value, search my MLS, and some other good stuff. So take a look at that. And if you have any questions, you can reach out anytime. Thanks so much for joining me on this update, and I'll be back next week with another market update. Have a great one and Happy New Year.